And away we go. Alright, let's see what me, Eric, or Risk have sent in the group chats, and whatever comes to our minds when we see such, so on and so forth. So, I've sent a screenshot, and I replied to said screenshot with, "Gentlemen, it's happening." What's happening? What am I on about? Well, the screenshot in question is a post from Instagram by the account Fact Check Politics. The text within the post reads, "Breaking. Keir Starmer has reportedly told close allies that he plans to step down as Prime Minister and outline a formal timetable for his departure from Downing Street." Okay. I will say that it's impressive and a miracle that Starmer has made it this far as Prime Minister and leader of the Labour Party, given the scandals, the controversies, the complaints, not just from everyday people, also from his own cabinet and other MPs within the party. And whilst Starmer has said, "I will not step down. I'll do what I can," and you know what? I'll give him credit for that, for sticking to his guns, even if not many people want him to continue. And I have said a couple episodes ago, certainly on a different podcast, a lot of these Labour MPs are saying, "Starmer out, we want Starmer, we don't want him as leader anymore." Yet, they don't go much into detail about which Labour MP should be the next Labour leader. Of course, everyone is pointing to Andy Burnham, who is one of the most successful politicians within the Labour Party. However, right as of now, he's not an MP. And if Andy Burnham is going to be leading the Labour Party, he has to win a Westminster constituency seat, which, as of this recording, MP for Makersfield in Wigan, Greater Manchester, John Smith, said he plans to step down as MP to make way for Andy Burnham. Can't argue with that. Now, how would it be possible for Andy Burnham to win Makerfield if, in the last general election, whilst John Smith did win the Makerfield seat, he was only ahead by a couple hundred votes ahead of Reform UK? And this was before the first local elections where Reform had gotten the flying coloured result that a lot of people are saying that this is a big win for Reform, and anyone else that opposes Reform or concerned that how can people vote for this party? They want to get rid of your rights. They want to send immigrants out of the country. That's at least what I've heard from such people that oppose Reform. So back to Starmer planning to resign. Now, I'm not going to be too hard on Starmer, although in the past I have been about what he's doing right now. I will say that even when people are not supportive with Starmer, with what he's doing and the plans he plans on implementing, whilst he's still the leader of the Labour Party, just remember, this isn't soccer football. You can't just change managers whenever you feel like it and see, "Oh no, we got a terrible result. Time to change managers." No, even if you do change leaders in a political party, what plans do they have if they do become leader? And how often and how likely will they follow through with said promises that they make? Not all politicians are perfect. Not everything's going to be followed exactly. And again, back to with Andy Burnham, Makersfield by-election. Now, a lot of people, regardless of whether or not someone is an MP, people would love Andy Burnham to be leader of the Labour Party. However, Burnham has to be an MP first, hence why he is running in the Makersfield by-election in Wigan, Greater Manchester. And the reason why that's possible, John Smith, the current MP for Makersfield, announced that he would step down to make way for Burnham, which is actually very honourable of him to do so. Now, of course, not all MPs are just going to give up their seats like that. Yet, if there are MPs doing so, like they're stepping down to make way for another person to become an MP for that constituency, so that way the winning by-election candidate does become MP, just so that they can be eligible to run for a party leadership contest, if it's to be triggered. Yeah. And whilst people are pointing to Andy Burnham, what about the current MPs? Are there any of the current MPs that would be able to take on the job, or would they not do just as, or would they not be as good as what Starmer is doing to his best of his ability? Thing is, if anyone that says I want to be leader of the Labour Party, and then that person becomes the new leader of the Labour Party, a lot of people, most people, are arguing that that could worsen Labour's reputation and only accelerate the success of reform, which was inevitable anyway. Nonetheless, let's see how it goes with what Keir wants to do currently as Prime Minister, and the MPs that will stand in the Makersfield by-election, all just to make sure that whoever wins will determine not just the fate of the parties running in that by-election, also, if Burnham was to win, could this be a chance for Labour to redeem themselves? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. And even if Burnham does try to follow through with what he promises to do, likewise what he's doing with Greater Manchester, the Mayor of Greater Manchester, he's going to be in quite a pickle. Not just cleaning up the mess that's currently out there in the current government, also trying to follow through promises that he wants to make if he was to be Prime Minister. The reason why Andy Burnham is doing well in Greater Manchester, however, I have doubts how well he'd do as Prime Minister, is because Burnham's not working with much. Yes, Greater Manchester is one of the largest metropolitan areas, if you exclude Greater London. The amount of communities, the amount of infrastructure, and the number of people he is working with is not as much as opposed to leading an entire country. Now, I'm not saying Burnham has it easy. Burnham has been able to be manageable with what he has been doing as Greater Manchester Mayor. And one more thing, I will end on this. Whilst even when Burnham does win, in the event that Burnham does win the Makersfield by-election, a leadership contest is triggered, Burnham becomes the new leader of the Labour Party and thus Prime Minister of the current UK government, even with promises he does plan to commit. When that particular scenario does follow through, will he still be focused on strengthening the north of England, or will it be too bogged down and focused with other problems that the previous government have been focused on for who knows how long? It's a lot to think about, or at least that's a lot for me to think about. Only time will tell what happens until the Makersfield by-election, which is only to see the state of what the UK is in right now. And that is a lot of the stuff that's been said in the group chat so far since the last time I recorded a podcast episode. With that all being said, let's get right into the news. He snatched my phone when Moni Roy recalled first meeting with Suraj Nambia, experts weigh in. Bollywood actress Moni Roy was spotted on a dinner date with a friend in Mumbai, as separation rumours persist following social media observations that she and husband, Suraj Nambia, unfollowed each other on Instagram. After 4 years of marriage, beginning January 27, 2022, in Goa, Roy and businessman Suraj Nambaya confirmed their separation through a joint Instagram statement, noting that false stories have sensationalized their private lives. On Thursday evening, the couple shared a statement expressing dismay at media intrusion, stating, "We note with dismay the unnecessary and intrusive attention into our personal lives by certain quarters of the media," while emphasizing they address matters amicably and privately. Roy has repeatedly appealed for media restraint through an Instagram story, requesting outlets not publish false narratives and expressing appreciation for the respect for our privacy and the ongoing support we have received during this time. Roy, known for Nagin, Salakar, Gold, and Brahmastra Part 1, Shiva, met Nambaya in Dubai in 2018 and previously described their meeting as a page out of a storybook, while continuing her acting career with the forthcoming MX Player series Abhoga Hisab. Now, of course, I'm not too familiar with stories about, well, most things in India, even though I've been aware of unfortunate incidents that happened before in India. I'm not too much in the loop with celebrity news amongst Indian people. I will say that. Just reading this brief alone. Now, of course, whilst the story in itself, there's a lot going about, and most importantly, there is not much clarity on what on earth is going on between Roy and Nambaya. I would say, which I've said a couple times before, I would not jump to conclusions so quickly. Not just because the information about each story is vague, there's not much clarity. I would say not to jump to conclusions, as stories like this could still be developing, and only a few days or weeks after reading the story, there could be more information that a lot of people may not be aware of. So, so when you see stories like this about rumors, allegations, information that needs more context, take it with a pinch of salt. Nothing else. Give it a few days and a few weeks to see if more from this story does come out, and then eventually, once there is a conclusion with a clear description and context of what the story is about, then you could say, well, I don't get it. What's the holdup? Why would they have fallen out with each other? Why did they choose to unfollow each other? I'll think out. I don't have anything else to add besides what I've already said on the story about Maoni Roy and Suraj Nambaya. I hope the two are still in good contacts and have good relations with each other. Not saying they are. It's just, well, again, it's not clear what the story is even about. I know they unfollowed each other, and then there was information in the in the summary about how they met, how long they've been married for, and the two even go on into saying, and please stop with the rumors and the false allegations. It has to stop. Please don't invade our personal lives. And I agree. I actually agree with that. As much people enjoy knowing what goes on in celebrities' lives, there has to be a line drawn about people's personal lives. Yes, celebrities are in the public eye. They're going to be encountered with fans and other supporters of projects they've been doing in the past. You got to ask yourselves, and this is important, very important, how much of a difference does the work make into their personal lives? Regardless of the answer is not so much, or if the answer is, well, it makes a huge difference because now everyone's gathering around these people, these celebrities, because they just really like to meet them. They made a huge impact on whatever. Whatever most people are thinking about this question, that's not the point about how much of an impact celebrities have made that garnered so much attention. These celebrities still have their own personal lives that has been going on even before they even became famous. And I think I've kind of said something similar to that when there was the incident between Chaperone and Jorginho's daughter about how on earth would I describe this? It's not deep. It's just I try to I need to find a way. I just want to explain in a way that doesn't freak people out. But what the heck? People are gonna freak out anyway. Security, personal space, and yes, people do enjoy the art and the influence that these people have made. Again, people have personal lives, and they want to be left alone. And I'm not just talking about Chaperone, who I've talked about in the past. This also applies to Mauni Roy and Suraj Nambaya. And to end off on the story, again, I'm not sure if there is tensions between the two. If there are, which I hope there isn't, I hope I hope I hope they sort things out and they continue living their lives in peace and in happiness as well. That's all I will say, and that's all I know. World Health Organization calls Ebola outbreak in Congo and Uganda an emergency of international concern. On Sunday, the World Health Organization declared the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, and Uganda a public health emergency of international concern, citing rising cases and significant uncertainties about the epidemic scale. The 17th outbreak in the DRC involves the Bundibugyo strain, for which no approved vaccines exist, making the situation extraordinary compared to Ebola Zaire strains with proven therapeutics. Health authorities have recorded 246 suspected infections, 80 suspected deaths, and 8 lab-confirmed cases as of May 16th, with infections confirmed in Kinshasa and among 2 travelers admitted to intensive care in Uganda. Authorities in the DRC and Uganda were advised to activate emergency response mechanisms, enhance contact tracing, and scale up treatment capacity, though the World Health Organization does not recommend international travel or trade restrictions. An emergency committee will be convened to provide further recommendations as the World Health Organization clarified the outbreak does not currently meet the criteria of a pandemic emergency under international health regulations. I remember having this talk with one of my family members about another person in my family, one of my siblings, perhaps, when they've heard about the hantavirus and they were scared that, oh no, am I going to be infected with the hantavirus? And then one of my parents was like, no, no, we don't have to worry about the hantavirus. But the Ebola, on the other hand, yeah, I think that is a genuine concern. And they're right about that. One of my parents, that we should be more concerned about the spread of Ebola as opposed to hantavirus. And not just because there's so many information online saying that Hanta in Hebrew is a colloquial term for lie or scam, quote unquote. The scam virus that's translated in literal English for hantavirus. No, that's not the reason, or at least not the only reason. If people are saying that is one, yeah, there are diseases and viruses that have much worse impacts on human health and the physical body than other viruses that do exist. I would say that's the case with Ebola. Even though I don't know much about which bioorganism family that Ebola is part of, or just any family chain that Ebola is part of, I know that hearing so much about Ebola going on in Africa, you know it's serious. And it does not matter if you're in Africa, not in Africa, somewhere in the world, and you don't know anything about Africa, people will. There's Ebola in general has been a talking point for a very long time. And if people say that, oh, we don't need to worry about Ebola, well, how come we're talking about it again and again and again and again and again and again and again, so on and so forth? And I'm not saying hearing something repeatedly over and over is something that you should be concerned about. It just reaffirms the reality of whatever that story is that's being repeated many, many times. Now, whilst I don't believe it's likely for Ebola to spread to other countries outside of Africa, it's still worth noting and to be aware that Ebola is not something to be joked about. And I'm not going to say that Ebola is a manufactured bioweapon like COVID that many people are saying that COVID was, or even the hantavirus that people are saying, oh, this is a setup, this is trying to scare us into another lockdown. Which I know that there are people that will try and force those initiatives anyway to the best of their ability. Just it won't be successful in the next few years. Again, that's just me. Make of that as you will. Never stop questioning about what goes on in that. Never stop questioning what goes on in that world. Even if it doesn't affect you, that does not mean it won't happen to you. Ever. It will happen to you at some point. It just depends on where you are, what your physical status is, and whatever your purpose in life is, in regards to work, recreational purposes, or just enjoying life. AI used to pose as teen in Twitch sting of French ex-teacher. A former French sports official from Haute Saône, I'm not sure. I'm not good at French. Identified as Dominique Bouvier was caught on video by a pedophile hunter using an AI-generated teenage girl. The man in his 60s turned himself in at the Vesoul police station and was taken into custody. His home was also searched as part of the investigation. The case is now shaking up the legal landscape. According to public prosecutor Arnaud Crécourt, Dominique Bouvet turned himself in to the police after the widespread dissemination of the video in which he appears in conversation with a supposed 14-year-old girl, actually created by artificial intelligence. The former head of the Haute-Saône Departmental Olympic and Sports Committee and former departmental director of the UNSS National Union of School Sports was taken into custody Tuesday afternoon at the Vesoul police station. This measure was extended on Wednesday. The net is closing in on Dominique Bouvier as a search has been carried out in his home. Investigators are now scrutinizing every digital trace to shed light of these incriminating exchanges in order to determine as accurately as possible the criminal charges that may be brought against him, including suspicions of child sexual abuse. Dominique Bouvier faces serious charges, including dissemination, violent, pornographic, or degrading messages accessible to a minor, as well as making sexual propositions to a minor under 15 years of age by an adult. Faced with these charges, the justice system appears determined to leave no room for impunity. Dominique Bouvet was therefore tricked by content creator Finizzi, who specializes in tracking down pedophiles, which he broadcast live on TikTok. He uses an AI deepfake to disguise himself as a 14-year-old girl and starts chatting with men who try to flirt with her. These conversations take place on a video chat platform, and Finzi explicitly mentions the age of the men to see if they continue the conversation. In the exchange revealed today, Dominique Bouvet notably proposed a meeting and made sexually suggestive remarks to the woman he believed to be a teenager. He even offered to take her to the Parc des Princes, and went so far as to ask her, "If I kiss you, will that bother you?" Well, firstly, glad to hear that whoever the victim was is not a real person. I'll just be very clear right now. If this was real, and it was an actual 14-year-old girl, that would be devastating. Yet, it was a famous influencer using AI technology, posing as a minor, and using this technology to catch and hunt down pedophiles. So, in regards to most of that, I'm glad that no one has been harmed in this interaction. And I'm especially glad that the influencer or content creator that has been doing this to hunt down Dominique Bouvet has not just been strategic with how he goes ahead with interacting with these men, posing as a minor, also how the police tackle this situation. Regardless of if there's anything that would incriminate Dominique in any way, I'm glad that there are authorities somewhere in the world that take cases like this very seriously. And I'm so glad for that. Thank goodness. One thing I'll end off with is just, in general, the broader discussion about pedophilia. Why? What I don't get the appeal for older adults attracted to minors. What's up with that? I don't get that. And even if people didn't know that these people were even minors or children, still, no, absolutely not. I know I've said this many times, I will say it again. Just why? Why? That is vile. That is literally and metaphorically criminal. And whilst cases like this will still continue to happen in the next few years, I hope that the rate of these incidences about minors being hit on by older adults reduce significantly as time goes by. On top of access to the internet and knowing a lot about what goes on in the world, wherever we are, also the educational material about cases like this is becoming too hard to ignore, and especially becoming too hard to not know the consequences for in the event if these adults were to hit on or flirt with children. Mainly now, and certainly in the next few years, there is no excuse. There is no excuse to do stuff like this. I just no, absolutely not. And that is it for the episode.